Have you ever met someone who seems super nice at first, like they're your friend, but somehow you just get this weird feeling about them? Maybe they smile a lot, they compliment your work, they laugh at your jokes, and everything feels perfect. But deep down, something doesn't sit right. You can't exactly put your finger on it, but there's this little voice in your head saying, is everything really as friendly as it seems? Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're at work, and there's this colleague who always comes up to you with a big smile. They ask how your day is going, they say, "Wow, your presentation was amazing." They offer to help you with small tasks, they invite you for coffee, and at first glance you think, "Wow, this person is so friendly, they really like me." But here's the thing, over time, you notice little things. Maybe they're always around when your manager gives feedback and they seem to remember everything you do. Maybe they casually mention your ideas to others as if they're theirs. Or maybe they offer help in a way that subtly makes you dependent on them. Nothing obvious, nothing you can really call out, just little moments that make you feel cautious. And this happens not just at work, it can happen in everyday life too. Think about a friend in your social circle who's always complimenting you, always agreeing with you, always showing up at the right time. At first, it feels great. Who doesn't like someone being nice? But maybe later, you start hearing things about yourself that you didn't say, or maybe they always seem to benefit when you make a decision. Again, nothing huge, nothing crazy obvious, but enough to make you pause and think, wait, is this really just friendship? What I'm talking about is a kind of behavior that's really common, but often overlooked. People can appear extremely friendly on the outside, and you might even think they genuinely like you. They might smile, laugh, and act supportive, but behind the scenes, their intentions aren't always exactly what they show you. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just self-interest, competition, or even subtle manipulation. The key is, the smile you see doesn't always tell you the whole story. You might even catch yourself feeling conflicted. On one hand, you want to trust them because everyone likes someone who's friendly. On the other hand, there's a little nagging feeling in your gut that something is off. That's your intuition picking up on patterns, tiny signals, small inconsistencies, subtle behavior that doesn't quite match up with the words or smiles. Let's be honest, we all meet people like this time to time. Sometimes it's a coworker, sometimes a classmate, sometimes a friend you've known for years. And the tricky part is, they're usually really good at what they do. They know how to make themselves look like a friend, how to make you feel comfortable, how to gain your trust. And because of that, it's super easy to be fooled. But here's the interesting part. Once you start noticing the patterns, it actually becomes kind of fascinating. You start seeing how behavior, words, and actions don't always line up. You notice how little things like always agreeing with you, always showing up at certain moments, or always seeming to benefit when you succeed start forming a pattern. And that's when you realize maybe not everything is as straightforward as it seems. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly how this kind of behavior shows up in real life, in workplaces, in friendships, and in everyday social interactions. I'll show you what to look out for and how you can notice it early without overreacting or assuming the worst. But for now, I just want you to think back to the last time you met someone who seemed too nice, who made you feel a little cautious, a little uncertain. Can you picture them in your mind? Can you remember that tiny gut feeling that told you something wasn't exactly right? That's what we're starting with. That gut feeling, that first moment when your intuition whispers, something's off here. Because paying attention to it is the first step to understanding human behavior, social dynamics, and how to navigate tricky interactions. And trust me, it happens to everyone, and it's not about being paranoid, it's about being aware. So, as we go through this, I want you to keep that person in mind, the friendly one, the smiling one, the one who seemed perfect at first but left you questioning their intentions. That's the scenario we're going to explore, step by step, in a way that's relatable, practical, and completely about real life, not any kind of strategy or historical lesson. Okay, now let's talk about the actual behavior you might notice. This is the part where things start to feel a little off, even if everything still looks friendly on the surface. You know, that feeling you get when someone smiles too perfectly, praises you a little too much, or always seems to appear at just the right moment. Let's go back to the workplace example. Imagine your colleague who always comes over with a big smile. They compliment every little thing you do. "Wow, your report is amazing. You're really talented at this." They offer to help with tasks that, honestly, you could do yourself. And at first, it feels great, right? Who doesn't like someone being kind and supportive? But then over time, you start noticing tiny things. Maybe they're always around when your manager gives feedback. Maybe they casually mention your ideas to other people, and it sounds like they're the ones who thought of it first. Maybe they offer help, but it comes with strings attached, like making you feel dependent on them or subtly pushing you into doing things their way. Nothing major, nothing obvious, just these small, almost invisible patterns that make you pause and think, that's interesting. And here's the thing, this behavior can take different forms. In social settings, it might look like someone who always agrees with you, always laughs at your jokes, or always seems to know exactly what to say to make you feel comfortable. At first, it feels like you found a perfect friend. But later, you might notice that they're always benefiting from the situation, maybe getting praise, favors, or access to information you didn't even realize you were giving them. What's tricky about this is that it's subtle. It's not aggressive, it's not mean-spirited in a way that's easy to call out, it's just careful, polite, calculated behavior. And it's easy to miss because your brain naturally wants to trust friendly faces. That's why the gut feeling you get is important. Your intuition often notices inconsistencies before your conscious mind does. Let's make it even more relatable. Think about a friend in your circle who always seems perfectly polite, perfectly interested in what you're saying, and always knows the right moment to join the conversation. You might think, wow, this person really likes me. But maybe later you notice subtle hints, like they're always the first to share your ideas as their own, or they benefit whenever you make a good connection with someone else. Again, nothing extreme, nothing aggressive, just patterns that slowly make you question their intentions. And this isn't about being paranoid. Most people are polite, kind, and genuinely friendly, but some people are very good at presenting themselves as one thing while doing another. That's why noticing patterns, small inconsistencies, and repeated behaviors matters. The key signs are usually these tiny details, actions not matching words, timing that always favors them, or compliments that seem to have an underlying purpose. You might notice it in group projects, in social events, or even in family dynamics. Someone might always seem to support you, but if you pay close attention, you'll notice subtle behaviors that reveal where their real focus is. And once you start noticing, it becomes almost like a skill. Spotting tiny clues, seeing the patterns, and understanding that friendly behavior doesn't always mean pure intentions. So in short, the behavior itself is usually very smooth and friendly. Smiles, compliments, offers of help, they all look good on the surface. But the small patterns repeated over time are what give away the real picture. That's what we're focusing on here, how to notice those small, consistent signals and how to make sense of them without overreacting or jumping to conclusions. Think back to your own experiences. Have you ever noticed someone who was always just a little too helpful, a little too complimentary, or always perfectly timed in their actions? That's exactly the type of behavior we're talking about. The surface looks friendly, but the details tell a deeper story. And that's what makes it fascinating and useful to understand, because it happens all the time, in work, in social life, and everywhere we interact with people. All right, now that we've seen how this behavior actually looks in real life, let's take a moment to understand why it happens. Why do some people act friendly, supportive, and helpful on the surface, but their actions don't always match their words? What's going on in their heads? First of all, it's important to know that most of the time, people aren't doing this to be cruel. They're usually trying to achieve something, maybe to get ahead at work, maybe to gain influence in social situations, or maybe just to protect themselves in a competitive environment. It's human nature to want to succeed, to want to be seen positively, and sometimes that leads people to behave in ways that are polite on the outside, but self-serving underneath. Think about it like this. If someone is polite, complimentary, and helpful, they are essentially building trust and rapport. That trust then makes it easier for them to get what they want without creating conflict. It's a way of smoothing the path to their goals. And again, it doesn't always have to be malicious. It could just be a way to navigate social dynamics, but the result is that the behavior can feel a little tricky or manipulative to an observer. Another reason is that people are naturally social creatures. We want to be liked and we want to belong. Some people take that instinct and combine it with ambition or competition. They learn that being friendly and appearing supportive can open doors, create opportunities, and make others feel comfortable enough to share information, ideas, or resources. Once they've gained that trust, they might act in ways that prioritize their own interests. You might even notice it yourself sometimes. Have you ever found yourself smiling, complimenting someone, or helping out even if it wasn't 100% for their benefit? Humans do this all the time. We often mix genuine friendliness with a bit of self-interest, consciously or unconsciously. The key difference is that some people are extremely intentional about it and some are just naturally kind. That's why it can be tricky to tell the difference. Another factor is timing and consistency. Someone who behaves like this tends to be very calculated about when and how they interact. They show up at key moments, they praise you at times that matter, and they always seem to know exactly what to say to make you feel good. These behaviors aren't random, they're patterns, and once you start noticing these patterns, you realize there's a method behind the friendliness. It's also worth mentioning the role of perception. Often, we only notice the friendliness itself, and we tend to ignore subtle cues because it feels safer to trust someone. Our brains are wired to give the benefit of the doubt, to focus on smiles and kind words rather than small inconsistencies. That's why gut feelings are so important. They pick up on tiny mismatches before we even consciously notice them. And this is exactly what makes it fascinating. You start to see human behavior in layers. The words, the smiles, the gestures, they all create one layer, but beneath that layer there are intentions, patterns, and motives that might not be immediately obvious. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to be suspicious of everyone. It just means paying attention, noticing patterns, and being mindful of how actions align with words. So, in short, the reason people behave this way is usually a mix of natural social instincts, self-interest, and sometimes ambition. They want to be liked, trusted, and influential, and sometimes they're just testing the waters to see how others respond. The behaviors are subtle, calculated, and often very smooth, which is why it can feel confusing. Over time, noticing these patterns and understanding the underlying reasons helps you make better decisions about who to trust, how to interact, and how to protect yourself socially and professionally. It's not about judging people harshly. It's about understanding human nature and reading the signals that are right in front of you. So, keep that in mind. When someone seems overly friendly or too perfectly timed in their words and actions, it's usually not random. There's a reason behind it, and that reason often comes down to human psychology, social instincts, ambition, and self-interest, all wrapped up in a polite, smiling package. Now, let's make this a bit more concrete with some real-life examples. Seeing behavior patterns and understanding the psychology is one thing, but putting it into everyday situations makes it much easier to recognize. Let's start with the workplace. Imagine you're part of a team project. There's a colleague who is always incredibly friendly, always praising your work, and always offering to help. At first, it feels great. You think, wow, this person is so supportive. But then, over time, you start noticing small things. Maybe they're always in the room when you're discussing ideas with your manager. Maybe they take your suggestions and repeat them as if they came from them. Maybe they offer help, but it slowly makes you dependent on them or puts them in a better position. None of it is aggressive or obvious, but it adds up. Another example could be in social circles. Think about a friend who's always extremely polite, always seems interested in what you're saying, and always laughs at your jokes. Sounds nice, right? But then you start to notice that this friend always benefits when you make connections with new people, or they subtly take credit for your ideas. Again, it's very subtle, nothing you can point to immediately, but your gut picks up on it. Let's make it even more relatable. You might notice this with someone who seems too helpful in general life. Maybe they always offer to drive when you go out, always offer favors, or always seem to know exactly when you need something. At first, you appreciate it, because who doesn't like kindness? But after a while, you realize they often gain something from every interaction, a favor returned, information gained, or a social advantage. And it's not always negative or malicious. Sometimes people just operate that way because they are ambitious, competitive, or socially aware. But for you as an observer, it's important to notice the pattern. It's not a single action, it's the repeated behavior over time. The smile at every moment, the compliments, the perfect timing, they all add up to a pattern that's worth recognizing. You might also notice it in teams, clubs, or volunteer groups. Someone who always seems to volunteer first, always speaks up in meetings, always knows exactly what to say. On the surface, they seem super engaged and friendly, but over time, you might notice that they subtly position themselves as the go-to person, the one who always benefits from the collective work. Small actions, repeated consistently, tell the story. The key point is that in all these examples, the behavior is smooth, friendly, and polite. There's no yelling, no confrontation, nothing that seems negative at first glance. But the subtle patterns reveal how the person operates socially. And once you notice these patterns, it becomes easier to navigate interactions. You can enjoy the friendliness while being aware of the underlying dynamics without being paranoid or suspicious. Another thing to keep in mind is context. These behaviors often appear in competitive environments, like work or school, but they can also appear in casual settings, friends, neighbors, or even online communities. The trick is to observe carefully. How often does the behavior happen? When does it happen? Does it always seem to benefit them? These tiny observations added together tell you a lot. So to sum up this part, real-life examples show that people who seem very friendly and helpful often act in ways that subtly advance their own interests. In the workplace, in social groups, or even in casual friendships, the patterns are usually very consistent. Smiles, compliments, offers of help, they're all part of the surface layer. The deeper layer is what happens over time and how their actions align with their benefits. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean you stop trusting people. It just means you understand human behavior a little better and navigate interactions more wisely. Think about your own life, work, school, social circles. Can you spot someone who seems a little too perfectly timed, a little too complimentary, or always seems to gain from interactions? That's exactly what these examples are about. Observing, noticing, and understanding without overreacting is the key, and that's what makes it practical and useful in everyday life. Now that we've talked about how this behavior looks in real life and why people do it, let's get practical. How do you deal with it? How do you respond when someone seems a little too friendly, or when their actions don't quite match their words? First of all, don't panic. You don't need to confront anyone, accuse anyone, or overthink every single smile or compliment. Most people are genuinely friendly, and you don't want to make yourself suspicious or anxious for no reason. The key is awareness. Pay attention to patterns, not just single actions. One compliment isn't a sign, but repeated behavior over time tells the story. Start by observing quietly. Notice when someone's actions consistently benefit them, or when they always appear at moments that give them an advantage. Notice how their words match or don't match their actions. These are subtle signals that your intuition often picks up on before your conscious mind does. Another tip is to protect yourself without creating conflict. You can be polite, professional, and friendly, but maintain boundaries. Don't give away information, favors, or resources without thinking about the consequences. You can still engage and be friendly, but make sure your own interests are protected too. Also, rely on multiple sources of information. Don't judge someone solely by one interaction or one impression. Watch their behavior across different situations and with different people. Patterns show up over time, and the more you observe, the clearer the picture becomes. Trust your gut, but verify. That little nagging feeling that something is off is often your subconscious noticing patterns you haven't fully analyzed yet. Instead of overreacting, take it as a cue to pay attention, take notes in your head, and stay aware of the dynamics. Communication is also key. If you feel comfortable, ask clarifying questions or gently confirm details. Sometimes what seems suspicious is just miscommunication or coincidence, but often, careful observation will reveal consistent trends. Another practical tip is to strengthen your own position. If someone is subtly trying to benefit at your expense, make sure you document your work, clarify your contributions, and maintain professional or social visibility. That way, even if someone is very smooth, you're still in control of your own interactions. It's also helpful to share experiences with trusted peers. Sometimes discussing what you notice with someone else can give you perspective and prevent overthinking. You'll often find that others have observed similar behavior, and it helps you understand the pattern better. The most important point is balance. You don't want to become cynical or suspicious of everyone, but you also don't want to ignore patterns that could affect your personal or professional life. Awareness, observation, and subtle boundary setting are your best tools. So, to sum it up, notice patterns, protect your own interests, trust your gut, and verify before assuming anything. Engage politely, maintain boundaries, and strengthen your own position. And remember, friendly behavior on the surface doesn't always reveal the full story, but your careful observation and awareness give you the insight you need to navigate it effectively. By applying these tips in everyday life, whether at work, in social settings, or in casual interactions, you can enjoy positive relationships while staying aware of the underlying dynamics. You don't have to be paranoid, you just need to be smart, observant, and intentional about how you interact. And that's what really makes a difference. All right, we've gone through a lot so far. How some people can seem really friendly on the surface, how to notice the patterns in their behavior, why they do it, and what you can do to stay aware and protect yourself. Now it's time to wrap it up and bring it all together. The main takeaway is simple. Pay attention to behavior over time. Smiles, compliments, offers of help, they're all nice on the surface, but the repeated patterns tell the real story. Once you start noticing those little details, you start to see how people really operate without jumping to conclusions or assuming the worst. The second point is trust your instincts. That little feeling in your gut that says, something's off here, it's usually your brain picking up subtle patterns you haven't consciously noticed yet. Don't ignore it, but also don't overreact. Awareness is about observation, not paranoia. Third, stay polite and professional. You can enjoy interactions, maintain friendships, and still be aware of the underlying dynamics. Set boundaries when necessary, protect your own work and interests, and keep yourself in control of the situation. You don't need to confront anyone or act suspicious, you just need to stay aware and intentional. And finally, here's a little tip. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever met someone who seemed a little too perfect, a little too helpful, or always exactly in the right place at the right time? Can you recall that gut feeling that made you pause? That's exactly the scenario we've been talking about. Once you start noticing it, you'll be able to navigate social and professional situations more confidently. So here's my question for you. Have you ever noticed someone like this in your own life? Maybe at work, at school, or in your social circle? I'd love to hear about your experiences. Drop a comment below and share your story. Let's see how common this actually is. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights about real-life behavior, social dynamics, and how to navigate tricky situations without stress. Remember, it's all about observation, awareness, and staying in control of your own interactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.